all over to you, Partha Prabhu, for your session.
Thank you. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nirvisesha Sunyavadi Pashtascha Deshatarane Vanchakalpa Trubhascha Kripa Sindhya Evacha Patitanan Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha. Just gonna share my screen here. Oops, I'm sorry, it didn't start where it was supposed to. I'm just gonna have to back this up here. So we're going to be examining heroism in marriage. And some of the things we want to explore, which Vallabhari touched on, was the benefits of having a partner and an ally in your journey in life, the wife as a source of energy, how to be a hero in the eyes of your wife, and why we sometimes alienate our important ally, and how to maintain a healthy synergy in marriage. So, Srila Prabhupada is the founder Acharya of our society, and Srila Prabhupada undoubtedly is a true superhero in terms of what he accomplished. I'd just like to read you an interesting observation by someone, Dr. Stephen Davies, who's from the Institute of Human Studies, who was doing some research on changes in society and in terms of this concept of heroism. And so I'm just going to read these three quotes, and we're just going to explore them a little more deeply. So, history and human progress are driven far more by ordinary people doing sometimes extraordinary things than by special people with a unique destiny. Secondly, and very importantly, we should be very wary of stories and ways of thinking that suggest that we, the mass of people, can only be saved or elevated by the special chosen ones, heroic figures who will slay the dragons and lead the people to the promised land. This is potentially a very dangerous and risky way of thinking, and it misunderstands why things actually do change. So in the context of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, understanding that Srila Prabhupada is a superhero, why could this possibly be a dangerous mentality for us to wait for some superhero to come along and slay the dragons in our life? So why can that be a detrimental mentality? I'm going to ask you if you can just make some suggestions why that's a detrimental. Just put a back box. I'll give you a minute or two. Why would it be detrimental for us to just wait for someone to come and slay our demons?
We have to fly our own plane.
You have to fly your own plane. Okay, it wasn't in the chat box till you chatted. That's good. We have to fly our own plane. And that's very true. And if we don't fly our own plane, it's not very productive. And I'll just read you one other thing this gentleman said. Finally, we should recall that the end of endeavor is the preservation and improvement of everyday and ordinary life. And that is achieved not only by the heroic, the unusual, or elevated actions that people, both ordinary and unusual, may perform, but by the performance of simple quotidian tasks and everyday duties, as well as private acts of kindness and compassion. So that's a very interesting statement, that change is accomplished often by small acts, and sometimes we fail to appreciate how much impact even ordinary devotees can have in the world around them. And I witnessed a very powerful experience of that many years ago. I think it was maybe 1979, 1980. This is during the height of the Soviet era. And in Vancouver, they would have big Harinams in Stanley Park. And it's a very big world tourist area, so many people would surround the devotees and watch the chanting. And the devotees are chanting, and there's a few small children kind of dancing in front of the devotees. And there was one kind of portly looking lady. I went up to her to try to sell her a Bhagavad Gita. And she just put her hand out and put this vibe out like an electric fence, like just stay away from me. So I just backed off and let her alone. And then about 10 minutes later, I could see she was calling me to come closer. So I went over to her, and she said to me, "I'm from the Soviet Union, and I was told that you people were a dangerous cult." And then she said, "But I can see by how spontaneous these children are. They're dancing happily and engaging in this process in a very natural way." And she said, "I can see there's something very real here." So she said, "I want to buy this book, and I'm going to take it back to Russia and tell all my friends." So what that meant at that time, 1979 or 1980, people would get books into the Soviet Union. They would take photographs of every single page of the book and develop them in little photo labs in their basements, and then stitch all the pictures together, and they would make copies of these books. So these ordinary children who were raised by, ordinary rank and file devotees somehow contributed to some lady being moved to take a Bhagavad Gita and smuggle it into the Soviet Union. So that's a very powerful example that sometimes simple, small things can have a big impact in a way we can't always imagine. And interestingly, here's Srila Prabhupada's definition of a hero. This is from a letter June 6, 1972. Hero means someone who others want to follow as example of the best type of person. So you all become like that, perfect examples of Krishna conscious heroes and heroines. So that's a call to action. Srila Prabhupada, he's actually requesting all of us to become exemplary. And so again, as grihastas, we might ask, well, okay, what can we do as grihastas to facilitate Srila Prabhupada? And so this is from a letter, 1968 December. We require so many examples of householders to set examples for others. How, in Krishna consciousness, we can live peacefully and sanely, even in married life. So that's a call to action for all of us who are grihastas or aspiring to become grihastas. Srila Prabhupada is requesting that we can set examples so others can follow and live peacefully in Krishna consciousness. And it is interesting to note, Srila Prabhupada makes this point, how people can live peacefully and sanely. So we might ask, well, why is Prabhupada saying that? Why is Prabhupada saying sanely? And throughout different times in the movement, Srila Prabhupada became concerned about the state of marriage in our society. At one point early in the movement, one devotee left the movement and wrote Srila Prabhupada a letter saying that they wanted to come back with their new girlfriend. And so the person had divorced and immediately wanted to come back with some new girlfriend. And Prabhupada's secretary read the letter to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada told the secretary, "I should have stayed in Vrindavan." Thankfully, Prabhupada didn't. So Prabhupada, he was very concerned about that. And it's extremely important to have exemplary grihastas. And I was quite impacted on two different occasions. This is sometime in late 1970s. Two different occasions I was approached by life member families who were very respectful of the devotees and understood the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And they approached me on two different occasions, two different families, and said, well, this nice couple that used to preach to our family, they just like broke up and divorced, and they're asking me to explain what happened. And personally, I felt like I just wish I could have just disappeared on the spot and not have to explain that. It was a very awkward situation to be in. And from that situation, I took that if a couple, even, not that they shouldn't do more in terms of their service and mission to Srila Prabhupada, but even if they can just live together peacefully and happily and have a stable ashram, that is setting an example, and that example can be very powerful in the bigger picture. So again, this is a call to action for all of us to understand what it means to have healthy families in Srila Prabhupada's movement, and what we can do to help Srila Prabhupada with it. And so we might think, well, it's pretty difficult order to have a exemplary marriage. And from one point of view, there's no such thing as a perfect marriage, but at least we can be civil with each other and live peacefully, respectfully, and compassionately, and set examples for a peaceful, happy grihastha life. And if we take that as a call to action, then as Srila Prabhupada, he stated in the Bhagavatam, 8th canto, by the pleasure of the spiritual master, one can get extraordinary power, especially in spiritual advancement. The blessings of the spiritual master are more powerful than one's personal endeavor for such advancement. I'll read that again. The blessings of the spiritual master are more powerful than one's personal endeavor for such an advancement. So Srila Prabhupada's instructions, they are his blessings. These kinds of calls to action, if we can embrace them, those are his blessings. And if we can embrace those calls to action, as Srila Prabhupada is saying here, by embracing the order of the spiritual master, we can get more power than we can from our own personal endeavor. So there's that's a very important message to understand, that although it may be very difficult, grihastha life can be very challenging, but if we see that as a sacred duty, Krishna can help us. And so we want to explore this aspect of energy in the grihastha ashram. So as Yogeshwara was referring to some bottled energy drink, so we're not getting our energy from some bottled energy drink in the grihastha ashram. So Srila Prabhupada, he commented in a lecture 1972, behind every great man is a great woman. This is a fact. Krishna has got also energy, the original Purusha, Radharani, energy, Prakriti. Krishna is engladdened in the presence of Radharani. That is nature. Similarly, a man, he becomes energized if he has got a good wife or a good mother. This is the history of the whole world. Any great man in this world, you will find that behind him he has got a good wife or good mother. Prakriti, energy, that energizes him. So we might examine in our own relationships, are we finding our partners, our spouses, a source of opposition or a source of inspiration? So what I'd like to do now is just, Mangalananda, if you could administer the first poll. This is an anonymous poll. I'd just like to have you give us a little indication of, if you're married or in a relationship, what's the state of that relationship? Are you getting energy from it? Are you feeling it's a healthy relationship? So if you can rate that on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being very low in terms of getting energy and 10 being in terms of very high, just click on one of those options and we'll just get some feedback. Okay, so almost everyone. There's a few devotees with they perceive as healthy, very good, pretty good, above average, and a few devotees maybe a little just above par or a little below par. So that's healthy to know, because Srila Prabhupada, he's wanting us to become exemplary, so at least we want to have healthy relationships. And also in terms of your relationship, there's different stages in relationships. When a couple first comes together, there's this honeymoon stage. Sometimes it's referred to as limerence or symbiosis. And in that state of symbiosis, everything's perfect. It's like you're walking on the moon. Life's a breeze. You can't see anything wrong with your partner. That's a temporary stage. And sometimes after that, maybe 1 year, 2 years, you enter into a stage in which you begin to discover you do have differences, and it's called a differentiation stage. So the beginning symbiosis is like, it's like we, and you and me are one kind of. Differentiation is you versus me. We discover these differences, and some couples, they can get locked in that state of differentiation for their whole marriage, and it's not very comfortable. The healthy stage is to evolve out of that stage of differentiation to what they call sometimes a symbiotic balance, when you learn to work with each other's differences, and that's the state when you actually can get that energy and enthusiasm from your ashram. And that's what Srila Prabhupada, he wanted us to have these kind of exemplary ashrams where we get energized by our ashram and we can go out and face the world and do our service and do our preaching, whatever it is we have to do. So we're all in different situations. And, sometimes we hear this word destiny. We're all in a situation where we have to face our destiny and we meet our destiny. So we can ask, are we victims of circumstance? If we let ourselves be victims, develop victim consciousness, then we will feel ourselves as victims of circumstances. We'll become helplessly bound by the modes of material nature, and Krishna consciousness is meant to break us out of that cycle of being victims of the modes of material nature. Are we in full charge of our destiny? Definitely not. They say we make a plan and God laughs. So we can't control our destiny. But we're meant to use our destiny as a catalyst to change and to improve. And that's an important point. Whatever situation we're in, we want to see how we can take that as Krishna's arrangement, how we can actually progress in our life, and even if the problems are in our grihastha ashram, how can we take advantage of those situations to build a stronger ashram? So I'm going to ask a little question here. What can we do to get energies from our partners? What can we do to make our relationships a little more healthy, a little more Krishna conscious and productive, in terms of getting that kind of energy from our partners and from our relationship. So Mangalananda Prabhu is going to break you into groups. I'm going to give you about 6 or 7 minutes, and I want you to brainstorm some ideas. So you should have pick a scribe and a spokesperson in the group you get put in, and pick 3 of your best suggestions on what we can do to actually get energy and encouragement and enthusiasm from our spouses in our ashram. So Mangalananda, can you drop everyone in those rooms now? There they come. So welcome back. So I'm going to ask each group, what was your first choice and what you can do to facilitate getting that kind of energy from your wife. And pick your best one. Just give us one, because I'll take one from each group. So who's the spokesperson for group 1? Raise your hand and unmute yourself.
Since I was the scribe, we didn't pick a spokesperson, but didn't have time to pick one that was the most important. But I would say one of them was loving yourself, taking care of your body, mind, and spiritual life.
Sorry, looking after yourself? Self-care? Yeah. Okay, self-care. Now, can we have the second group? Who's the spokesperson there?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Srila Prabhu. But I'm not sure which group I was in, but I can go. Really didn't get a chance to decide on the best one, but from whatever I noted down, I think one of the important point was that we should be accepting. We should be able to accept each other's different opinions in our services also. So we should be able to respect the different opinion.
So you're saying respect and cooperation.
Yes, yes.
It's group number 6.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
That was group 6?
Yes.
Okay.
And probably, I was number 2. I was trying to unmute myself. I couldn't unmute fast enough. Sorry.
Okay, number 2.
Yeah, so we actually, it was 3 points that we all came together that actually linked all together into one.
Okay.
And it was to try to learn to hold the space for your partner instead of just coming up with an answer and trying to fix the solution, so that you could come to a unified solution, how to work out a goal. So not always just trying to step in and fix.
Maybe the bulb.
Actually,
it's easy enough to.
You're saying to be present and give empathy. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, exactly. Probably exactly. Yes.
Okay, presence and empathy. So that was now group 3.
I was asked to unmute, so I'm assuming that meant somebody wanted me to be the spokesperson.
Okay.
Putting energy in to the relationship. If you want to get energy out, then you have to invest energy in. I think that was the thing that was repeated or affirmed most in the few minutes of our discussion.
So you're saying it's a reciprocal relationship.
Well, it's reciprocal, but you take the initiative to be the first one to put energy in, and then you start that feedback loop.
Right. Okay, group 4.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. So I think we had a few good ones, but I think the best one we had was actually listening.
Listening, okay.
You know, instead of just jumping in to solve everything, to actually take the time to allow the wife to be heard.
Okay, good. Okay, group 5.
Hare Krishna. I think I'm group 5. Um, so we didn't all quite come to an agreement, but the one that we did kind of mostly was to give each other like a bit of a break, some time apart, so the other person can kind of recharge, especially if you have kids, where one person can take the kids for a day or half a day while the other person gets a bit of alone time.
Hmm.
But however, one devotee disagreed and said he actually wanted to involve his wife in more activities. So
So I'm hearing there's a need to be together, but also a need to be apart sometimes too.
yeah.
Okay. And group 7?
Hare Krishna, accept the humble obeisances of Lord Srila Prabhupada.
Right.
We were getting to know each other a little more, and then more people were coming into the room, and then we found out we had very little time left. So we had the discussion a little bit, and from our backgrounds, and I promised that I would like to speak on behalf of the group because there's some things that we did, in fact, get to talk a little bit about. Support. Main thing, support. That's yeah. Support the wife, support the family. Let them feel you're there for them. And that usually helps a lot.
Okay. Okay. So that's good feedback and good advice for all of us who are looking to have healthy, strong relationships. I've been involved in marital education for almost 20 years now, and I'll just share some of the things that I've observed which facilitate women giving energy to their spouse and feeling that kind of mood that they want to reciprocate with love. And one of the things that's probably pretty obvious is that we want to slay the dragons. And if you're walking in a dark alley, your wife's going to want to hold your arm. She wants to know you're there to protect her. If you're at Tsarnaev, the men can chase the bears out of the garden, which is quite frequent. And actually, a lot of the women here are quite heroic. They will also chase the bears out of the garden. And also for women, slaying the dragon and being the knight in shining armor, it can look different to different individuals, different women at different times. I remember talking to one young couple who were doing premarital education, and I asked the young lady, well, what does the knight in shining armor look like to you? And she said, well, if there's some lettuce that was forgotten in the back of the fridge for weeks and it's black and slimy, he will take it out and dispose of it. That was the knight in shining armor to her. And sometimes for men, that's very healthy to have that discussion with your wife. What does protection look like to you? What do you need? And it's going to be different for different individuals. And it's important that we understand what our spouses need to feel that kind of protection in that way. Another important thing, many of the men mentioned this idea of emotional rescue, of being present. That's a very strong need for women. And for men, the need for empathy, it's not as profound as for women. I'll just give you a little maybe comparison of how it kind of works. The Rupa Goswami, he describes different loving exchanges amongst Vaishnavas, and two of them are offering prasadam and accepting prasadam. And we all get energized by that. It's pretty hard to deny that. And our whole movement is based on prasadam distribution. It's very spiritually potent. And so we guys, just imagine if sometimes couples have different arrangements. Maybe they share the cooking, or there was one gentleman who was saying he does all the cooking in the family. So sometimes there's different arrangements. But just imagine for 1 minute, how would you feel? Actually, we have a poll for this. Can you administer that, Mangalananda? How would you feel if it was your wife's day to cook or something several days in a row, and she completely forgot to cook for you? How would you feel? Is it possible to administer that poll? How would you feel? Would you feel like not concerned? Would you feel ignored? Would you feel angry or unloved? Your wife not concerned. Wow. Ignored, yeah. Angry. Unloved, yeah. And I'd actually propose, generally, when we feel that kind of anger in those kind of situations, usually anger is something meant to exhibit toward someone who's doing harm. And I think if we really peeled back our emotions, it's probably not that we're angry. More or less, it's probably that we're feeling ignored or unloved. So that's a hypothetical situation, but it wouldn't be very nice if your wife, forgot to express that kind of appreciation. Can you, Mangalananda, bring up the next question? The next poll there. So how often do you verbally express appreciation for your partner's cooking? Daily, occasionally, rarely? I can't remember the last time. Okay, you guys are doing pretty good. I met one lady in Ireland. She was probably one of the best cooks in our movement. She ran successful restaurants in South Africa, helped with the restaurants in Ireland. She looked like Yamuna and she cooked like Yamuna. And she commented to us, she invited us for prasadam, and she said, I cook for my husband and he never says thank you once. Never says thank you once. And it's important to express those kinds of reciprocations. And I was in Brazil. Actually, I've visited there 3 times, and it's a very amazing culture there. They're very, very appreciative. If you get on a bus, every single person that gets off the bus will go through the front door, look at the bus driver, and say "Obrigado," thank you very much. It's just a part of the culture, and it's important that we need to express that kind of appreciation for our spouses, our partners, when they cook. And even if you're listening and you're not married, express appreciation to the temple cook. They need to know that their service is appreciated. So that's important. So we can close that. So the other exchanges Rupa Goswami recommends are revealing your mind in confidence and hearing in confidence. And some of the men understood that was a very important exchange, that they needed to be present for their wives, not problem solve, and sometimes just give empathy. And those men are likely to have who realize that, are very likely to have happy relationships because they're fulfilling that need of their spouses. But on the other hand, if you can just imagine, if you didn't give that kind of emotional presence to your wife, if you didn't give that kind of empathy, what that's going to feel like to you. So for men, prasadam is a big thing. And, we saw how if we didn't get prasadam, if they forgot about us, we would feel ignored or unloved. And similarly, for women, if we're not giving that kind of emotional presence, they can also feel ignored and unloved. And that can become problematic in marriages. And I'm just gonna show a chart here, which kind of shows how things can break down. So in a healthy relationship, the husband, he's giving protection, he's giving physical, emotional, financial, and spiritual protection. He's given affection in terms of verbal appreciation, that kind of presence, empathy, kindness, and openness. And so the wife, she's receiving that. She's feeling loved, and she gets a kind of energy from that. And from that, she reciprocates with appreciation, affection, comfort, gentleness, kindness, prasadam, obviously, and nurturing. And so when you have that reciprocation, there becomes this synergy of reciprocation of energy, security, and love. So that's a healthy relationship. It can break down, and it can break down from either side. But from the men's side, if we don't give that kind of emotional connection, if we don't express that kind of verbal appreciation, don't give that kind of presence and openness to our wives, they're not going to be satisfied. And if they're not satisfied, the affection, the gentleness, eventually the kindness, that's going to diminish, and it becomes a downward cycle. And that circle of synergy and affection and love, it's going to become constricted. So that's not what we want. Prabhupada was saying he wanted examples of, exemplary marriages. So we don't want to be like Herlinda and John. You never say you love me. And he says, I told you the day I married you, if anything changes, I'll let you know. That does not work. It does not work for healthy relationships. That's a formula for a marital disaster. So in healthy relationships, there'll be a reciprocation of positive exchanges. And it's inevitable because we're struggling to get out of the conditioning of the material modes of nature. There's going to be some negative exchanges. So in a healthy relationship, 40 years of research, very detailed research, has showed that healthy marriages can have 20 or more positive interactions to one negative. And in that state, the inevitable negative exchange, it's not that impactful because there's a big positive balance. The research also showed that 5 positive exchanges to 1 negative, the relationship's just kind of treading water. It's not in a dangerous situation, but it's not really going to progress very well. And if there's less than 5 positive or more than 1 negative, the marriage can be headed for serious problems. And actually the organization, the Gottman Institute, that studied this, they could predict with over 90% accuracy by watching a couple's exchanges for 5 minutes what the state of their marriage would be in 5 or 6 years down the road. They could predict marriage breakups and divorce just by the lack of these kind of positive exchanges. So it's very important, if we want to accept this call to action from Srila Prabhupada, that he wanted exemplary marriages, that we have to try to understand what we can do to take responsibility to make our relationships healthy and strong and flourish. So just like everyone's got a car, you pay attention to the gauges in the car. You don't ignore your gauges when your car is heating up. My father-in-law did that, and the car seized up on him. So you want to pay attention, and you want to be a little in tune with what's going on in your relationship. You can feel when there's tension in the relationship. So what do? Do you ignore it? Do you just kind of bury that emotion? Or do you sit down and talk about it with your spouse? So emotions, they're like gauges on a car. They're trying to tell us something. And actually, in Latin, emotion meant to set something in motion. So we want to be a little attentive to the state of our marriage. What is our relationship feeling like? Does it feel healthy? Do we feel like we're thriving? And if not, what can we do to bring things into a state of harmony? And so there's always going to be difficulties and challenges in marriage. But when couples have this commitment to working on the relationship, keeping a relationship healthy, those challenges actually become a source of strength in the relationship, because they can, together, they can surmount the difficulties. And that's what synergy means. Synergy means one and one isn't just two. One and one can become more than two. And I know there used to be oxen here trained at Tsarnaev, and it was actually proven on some research that you can have an oxen and the maximum amount of weight they could pull, let's say it's like 1,000 pounds. And so you have two oxen separately on yokes pulling this sled that drags on the ground. Individually, they can both pull a maximum of 1,000 pounds. You take those two oxen, you put them on a double yoke, and you can put 2,000 pounds on that sled, plus another 300 or 400 pounds, they'll be able to pull that. Whereas individually, they would not be able to pull half that weight. So something happens with this synergy. And that's the kind of energy that Srila Prabhupada's talking about, which comes from a healthy relationship. And for Grihastas, we need to take advantage of that, because life in this world, it's stressful, there's problems. But when we have a base where we can go back to our home, there's some peace and a place to get rejuvenated and recharged, we can go back out and face the world with strength and determination, and accomplish wonderful things for Srila Prabhupada. But if our homes become a place of strife and problems and endless bickering and feeling like the wheels are continually spinning and we're not getting anywhere, it's not going to be the best situation. And it's just like we imagine we're going and telling people on the street, chant Hare Krishna and be happy. So if I'm in my marriage or relationships, I'm not happy, it's miserable, I'm starting to feel like it's a deep, dark well, and I go out and tell people, chant Hare Krishna and be happy, I'm repeating the message of the disciple succession. It's going to have some potency. But if I'm actually happy in my life, and I'm telling people to chant Hare Krishna, it's going to have much more efficacy. So again, like Srila Prabhupada, he's requesting us to have these kind of healthy relationships. And I can't stress that enough, how important it is. Just like Srila Prabhupada, he wanted Varnashram. He wanted some kind of exemplary society based on some Varnashram principles. And the basic foundation building stones of the Varna ashram structure are each individual Grihastha ashram. And so if those ashrams are flourishing, strong, healthy, if they can endure the inevitable challenges, then you can erect a very healthy society. If your foundational building stones are crumbling, how will you ever erect a structure? I've visited places in the world where the leaders have said in their communities, they said the divorce rate was probably in the neighborhood of 80%. That is catastrophic. That's catastrophic. In the outside world, it's 50% in most places. So if we're having areas where the divorce rate is higher than that, we seriously have to examine as a society what are we missing? How are we not supporting the Grihastas in our community to have healthy relationships? So again, you will find that there's a handout that was sent to all the participants, and it's a summary of the PowerPoint. And in the end, you'll find this little summary, and there's actually a link to articles related to all the points we've discussed. And again, in terms of empowerment, it's very important to realize that you as a grihasta can be a hero. You may be a small hero, but you can be a hero, and it's important. It's important. It's so important. Even if you have children, they're looking up to you as a hero. The little kids next door, they're looking up to you as a hero. That you have a healthy, stable relationships. Kids see that. They learn from that. If it's an unhealthy relationship, the kids also, they get very stressed by that. So it's very important that as grihastas, we see that as a responsibility to have healthy, strong relationships. And again, we can take that responsibility to be exemplary. And taking that responsibility, there is empowerment that's available to us if we actually do that. And again, we don't have to be perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect relationships. There's couples who work on relationships. And that's one thing I hope you would take away from this, is the importance of the Grihastha ashram, how it's a great responsibility, how we can make our ashrams healthy, and in that way be a contribution to the movement of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. So Srila Prabhupada, he is a superhero who inspired many individuals to do small things with devotion. And the result of that was something very great. And that's Srila Prabhupada's unlimited glory, is that he was able to inspire devotees to take up his mission and do things. And this is one way we can facilitate Srila Prabhupada's mission. So I'm going to open it up here for questions now. If anyone has questions or comments.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. If there are any questions out here, you can either put it in the chat section or you can raise your hands. As we said before, there are reactions, which is at the bottom of the screen. If you click that, then there is an option to raise hands. You can go ahead and raise your hands. So first, we have a question from Navkishore Prabhu. Navkishore Prabhu, can you unmute yourself and ask the question?
Sure. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Partha Prabhu, for the wonderful presentation and for the points that you raised. One thing I think about is sometimes I think the impression of Srila Prabhupada's own marriage was in terms of how it was depicted in the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita as I think his father had given some advice in terms of I think Prabhupada wanted to, marry someone else, but then he was ultimately directed by his father to choose another woman. And then, there was this understanding that his wife wasn't supportive of his Krishna consciousness, and ultimately his desire to serve Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, in one sense, in the larger sense of his purpose. And I guess I find it difficult that in quoting Srila Prabhupada as the founder Acharya, that sometimes you think about, okay, well, like in his own life, if he felt like his marriage at a certain point, he just realized that this wasn't working with his Krishna consciousness, that I think sometimes there's an implicit understanding that it's okay not to put too much emphasis on your marriage, because your Krishna consciousness is the most important thing. And I don't think anybody would necessarily contest that, but over the years, a lot of my anxieties have been, if I get married, how will that work with chanting my rounds and watching the kids, and just kind of, thinking about what's primary and secondary, and how these things all kind of relate to ultimately bring about a holistic Krishna conscious individual.
Regarding Prabhupada's situation in his Grihastha ashram, Yogeshwara addressed that briefly in his session, of how Srila Prabhupada's situation was very unique, and we don't want to use that as an excuse not to take responsibility for our own ashrams. And so that's an important point, that if we don't put energy into our relationships to make them healthy and just let them deteriorate and then just think, well, that's Krishna's mercy, we may actually not get Krishna's mercy. And there may be individuals in relationships where the spouse is inimical or, as Yogeshwar said, just made me have some serious mental problem. Then maybe one might give up family life. But generally, we need to have those kind of healthy examples in our society, and sannyas or divorce, or sannyas or vanapras shouldn't be excuses for divorce. It actually should be a mutual decision amongst husband and wife that this is beneficial for our own spiritual advancement. And you're also bringing up how, it's going to be difficult. And yes, Grihastha life is difficult. There's a lot of responsibilities. And as Srila Prabhupada stated that, if we see those things as the order of the spiritual master, we can get some empowerment to help us through those times of difficulty. And I think that's one of the problems that was propagated by many negative paradigms in the past in ISKCON, and sometimes currently, that if you're a grihastha, you're fallen, it's a deep dark well, you're a not very advanced devotee because you're grihastha. And so if you hear those kind of negative paradigms repeatedly, it's almost like a subtle form of emotional abuse, that you're less than a brahmachari, you're less than a sannyasi, you're inferior, you're fallen. So we continue hearing that, and it can weigh on you. And maybe even you don't believe those things at the time you hear them. At the time in life, maybe you are married and you start to experience some challenges. If you've been exposed to that kind of negative paradigm, you may start to believe it at those times of difficulty. But we should know that Grihastha life, it's a great responsibility, and it's not easy. And couples can work out things that are even sometimes seemingly irreconcilable. One of my god sisters, she married a Muslim gentleman, and at a certain point, their relationship became very difficult, and she actually started to throw all his things out of the house onto the street. And her mother, who was also a devotee, they're both Prabhupada disciples. Her mother said, no, you put those things back. You have to work this out. So he's Muslim, she's a Hare Krishna, and she stopped trying to change him and started to respect him and accept him for who he was. And their relationship changed dramatically to the point that her husband, he's like a Hare Krishna Muslim. He knows more Bhagavad Gita than many devotees I know. He likes to come to class. He doesn't chant japa, but he'll love to come to class. Great philosophical questions and points. But because they learned to respect and honor the differences, it actually strengthened their relationship. So it is possible to navigate differences and the inevitable challenges and difficulties, balancing life's complexities, that's something you learn as you go through the ashram. But understanding that it's a sacred duty and you can work through that. So good question. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. And I would also request all the participants to please put their questions in the most precise manner. And because we have a lot many questions and a lot many hands here. So can I request here John Prabhu, who wants to ask a question?
Hare Krishna, thank you. And thank you for the presentation. Very much appreciate it. I think one of the things I had to work on in my relationship was really looking deeply at the baggage that I bring into it, and these I guess what I call some scars from relational images, ways that I have learned about being in a relationship when I was a kid, when I was a young boy and a young man, and then bringing those into the relationship, falling in love and expecting that woman, that partner, to be the answer to all my problems, and everything. To me, that's a heavy trip to lay on someone. And it's like carried all these images and project them onto my partner. And I really find that I had to work on that, and I still have to work on that. And I'm just wondering if there's any connection with that in Shastra that would be helpful.
I think it involves, like you mentioned, sometimes you have these things like some scars from maybe early life or something. And that's a very good question, because it's kind of a segue into one of the sessions tomorrow. That, as you say, sometimes we have this baggage, and it's like a kind of conditioning. And just like we understand we're conditioned by the modes of material nature in this world, and it actually affects us. And we can have those kind of the kind of baggage. Sometimes there can be like baggage from very unhealthy or toxic emotional atmospheres in our family of upbringing, or maybe sometimes there's even physical abuse. And those kind of traumatic experiences, it's a kind of conditioning that comes upon us, and it actually, those traumatic experiences literally get imprinted in your neurological pathways in your brain. So it's actually a kind of conditioning, literally. The modes of material nature, it's actually been proven by research how you become conditioned in this life from kinds of experience. And what happens when you have those kind of trauma experiences, you might be in a current situation and your partner or someone does something, it triggers that past memory of that experience. And what happens when you're triggered, although the current situation might not be equal to the situation of the traumatic past, the memories that are imprinted within your consciousness manifest, and you might feel the same fear or the same anger, although it's not really justified to the situation currently, and you will literally can act out based on the past previous trauma. And it does take sometimes a lot of internal work to be able to unravel it. We were just talking a while ago to one young man. He realized he had some very hard times opening up emotionally. He was trying to understand why. And he was at a temple, and he said the children were, making projects with paper and those that glue you used in school, right? And he said he smelled that glue. He just walked by the room, and just that smell of the glue reminded him of when he was a kid. And he said he just started to sweat, and all these memories came of when he was a kid, of his father abusing his mother. He would never give her enough money even for food. His father one time put a gun in his mouth. Can you imagine, as a child, witnessing and seeing all these things? But just by smelling the glue brought all those memories to the front. So he was realizing, well, that's why he's having a difficult time accessing his emotions now, because he has to suppress those emotions from the past. So we may all have some kind of condition like that to greater or lesser degrees that can manifest. And if we don't learn to address them and process them, they can actually sabotage our relationships. And so, yeah, that question is a real good segue into a session tomorrow. It's going to be very interesting. But a very good question. Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. And now we have Badar Prabhu who wants to ask the question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for the class. So I was wondering if if we're getting emotional support from friends, and we're engaged in a lot of service. What are the benefits that the Grihastha ashram can bring? Can you talk more about the benefits of the Grihastha ashram? Because
are you saying?
Can I request everyone to please mute their mics?
Actually, the moderator can mute everyone, and then we can just unmute Bader and me.
It's actually, I think, Bader, I think someone's in your background, right? Talking?
Yes.
Yes, right. So it's actually from Bader's mic.
So, Bader, you're saying that sometimes if I understood you correctly, we may have emotional support like in groups of friends, etc. And can we still get some benefit from our family?
No, I meant, can we have, say we have emotional support and friends and service and all that. Are we still, like, what are the benefits of the Grihastha ashram on top of that? Can you talk more about the benefits?
Well, so you have more. You also have emotional support, and again, it's very important for a healthy relationship to give that kind of emotional support to your wife, because it's a very important need for women to have that kind of feeling that someone's there to listen to them and be present with them. It's an extremely important need. And she'll get energized by that, and women, they reciprocate based on, as one of the groups said, that you have to put energy into the relationship to get something out. So when we give that kind of loving empathy to our spouses.
I don't think I phrased the question properly, because I meant if we are single and we're engaged in a lot of service and having, yeah, and then what are the benefits of getting into a marriage that are on top of that? Like, can you elaborate more on the benefits of getting into marriage?
Well, I'm not like trying to make a sale, and I wouldn't want to sell you on it. I think that's a decision you have to make, and I think it's a decision that all men have to make. Most men will get married. Prabhupada said that, but some men, they do find that kind of support outside, and actually many of the sannyasis I know who are very successful and have been successful long term in their sannyas ashram, they have those kinds of circles of support. And the ones that didn't tended to become isolated, and a lot of those are the ones who fell down from the sannyas ashram because they didn't have a support circle to support them in that kind of emotional support. So if you can get that kind of support and don't feel the need for marriage, then you're blessed. You're blessed. But if you do feel that need for a close, intimate life partner, the benefits can be very great in terms of society. Like, I grew up in a family, both my sides of my parents came from large families, so any kind of social event, there was aunts and uncles and cousins, and it was a very wonderful atmosphere to grow up in. It was very, very nourishing, and none of my aunts or uncles divorced. I didn't even know what divorce was probably until maybe I was like 25. It was the first time I ever heard of it. And so it was a very healthy atmosphere to grow up. So one benefit of the Grihastha ashram is not just the benefit you derive, but the benefit you give to your family and society. It creates that kind of very nurturing atmosphere. So again, I don't think it's necessarily a cost-benefit analysis. Maybe it's to some degree, but you want to see what your nature is. And I think most men, if they're introspective, they're going to know, do I need to enter Grihastha ashram? Is that going to be beneficial for me, or is it not? And if you have a close circle of friends, they will help you. There's one young man I know, he studied at Govardhan for some time, and he was in the ashram in New York, and he wasn't thinking about getting married, but his godbrothers in the ashram, they said, we think you should consider getting married, because they could see he just had a little different nature than someone who was really cut out to be a real strict brahmachari. So if you have that kind of association, they can help you with those kind of decisions too.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Prabhuji, and I hope, Partha Prabhu, that answers your question. Are there any more questions? Because I've got one question to be asked, and it's been told to me to ask in anonymous manner, and I'm going to do that. But is there anybody else who wants to ask a question right now? Okay, so the question that I've got is that why do ISKCON does not talk about the relationship outside of the heterosexual relationships? What is the perspective on that?
Why doesn't ISKCON talk about it?
Yeah.
Question. In seminars we've done, we've had homosexual couples. I don't have a problem with that if they're in the seminars. In one country we were in, there was one couple. They actually wanted to be trained as mentors, how to do marriage mentoring in the homosexual community, because they saw that there was breakups going on there too. They were trying to think what they could do to help make strong relationships in that community. And one time we were asked the question, well, what about what about homosexuality? And my wife answered it very well. She said everyone needs affection. Everyone needs affection. And for some individuals, because of their circumstance, it manifests in a different way. And so we accept that. And we see that Srila Prabhupada, he accepted everyone. Prabhupada had disciples who were gay, and Prabhupada never judged anyone. Prabhupada never judged anyone. So we want to support and encourage everyone in their ashrams or whatever the situation is, and not be judgmental, and accept everyone's service, and give everyone that opportunity to progress in their spiritual life.
All right, thank you, Prabhu. Hope that answers your question. Are there any more questions that we have here? Or we can give the opportunity to the participants to ask more questions if they have.
If there's no questions, I could do a pop quiz.
Oh, well, that would be wonderful.
If we're talking about heroism. Okay, one sec here. Okay, the pop quiz is, you live at Tsarnaev, it's 7 p.m. There's 200 out-of-control fires in the province. It's tinder dry. The sun is setting. A lightning fire is spotted 1 mile. This is real. A lightning fire is spotted 1 mile up a 45-degree slope. A fire can double in size every 30 seconds. Government crews cannot come till morning. What can you do to actually stop that fire? What are you going to do? There's no water up there. What are you going to do? How are you going to fight a fire?
Okay, any
Are you going to panic?
Well,
I
any
think
hands
you're
out there?
perfect to answer that, Partha Prabhu.
Yeah. I was about to say that.
Okay.
I have some suggestion.
Yeah.
I had someplace or read someplace that if you put gold and water to the fire, it feels like a Agni.
No, it's 1 mile up a slope. There's no water there. Okay, I'm going to tell you. Here's our Tsarnaev fire crew. This is 3 a.m. in the morning after they put that fire out. They worked all night, pitch black, dark moon night, put the fire out. What they had tools, just shovels and something called a Pulaski, which is like a pick. You build what's called a fire guard around the fire so the fire won't go out. You put any burning material into the fire, that burns out. And so they had tools, they had knowledge, and they had training, and they put a fire out. So, in our relationships, sometimes there may be little fires burning, but either we can stand there and panic, or just let everything burn down, or we can find out how can we put this fire out? How can we put this out? So that's a bit of a lesson for you, that we have those kind of difficult situations. Seek tools, seek knowledge, and we get that kind of knowledge and those tools, we can manage these type of problems that come up in marriage, and not let them be fires that consume our marriages.
On that note, Prabhu, there is one of the questions, since you're mentioning about the tools, there is one devotee, he wants to ask, at what stage should the couple seek professional advice to save the marriage?
You know what? Research shows that when couples are having a serious problem, most couples wait 6 years. And the problem is, after 6 years, you become conditioned to those negative patterns that you developed, and it is possible to rectify them, but it's going to take a bit of work because it's become habitual. And one of the things that we're trying to institute in ISKCON, and with the help of Bhakti Marg Swami and the Canadian leadership, we've made it a policy in Canada, if couples want to get married in Canadian temples, they need to get some premarital education first to kind of equip them for the journey of marriage. So we help them discover their strengths, their weaknesses. We help them to realize that, look, you do have some differences, and here's some tools you can use to talk about them. And so we equip them with some communication skills, ways to express what they need constructively. And so it gives them a foundation to stand on in their marriage. And research shows that the premarital counseling can greatly reduce the divorce rate. So Canada, it's mandatory. Some of the gurus in ISKCON are now sending disciples to my wife and I to do premarital education. And we've done like 700 sessions since COVID started. We have trained mentors who are mentoring couples in Kazakhstan, in Russia, in Germany, India, South Africa. So we're trying to do preventative maintenance, preventative protection by equipping people with the tools so they can solve their own problems in advance. So just like you had no idea, you want to stop a fire, you just get rid of the fuel. Simple. There was one fire here. Someone started a grass fire. They had no idea what to do. They panicked. And it just got completely out of control. They could have put it out probably in 10 minutes, but they panicked. They had no idea. Just make a little circle, take away the fuel, burns to the edge, goes out. Knowledge, tool, shovel, it's easy. So your marriage, there's going to be problems. There is problems. There's tools, communication, conflict resolution. Learn how to be respectful, compassionate, kind. It's not rocket science. And as also the one Prabhu was saying, that it was John, say sometimes we may have some baggage from the past that makes it more complicated. And if we can realize that, then we can seek help to deal with that baggage in the past so it doesn't affect our current relationship. So there's many things we can do to have healthy relationships. And yeah, you don't want to wait till things are broken till you fix them.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Partha Prabhu. While you were mentioning about the knowledge and the tools, there are a few devotees, and they mentioned in the chat group that pray for the rain. And that's something, taking the example of what you said. So how valid do you think is this particular situation? When should one get?
Well, you definitely want to pray. And praying means, like if I have a toothache, I can pray, Krishna, please help me. But Krishna's going to give me some intelligence. Oh yeah, just look in the phone book, find the dentist, and go see a dentist. Mm-hmm. So if I'm having some problem in my marriage, I can pray to Krishna that please help me, give me the intelligence what to do. And if I can't figure it out myself, I can seek help. Mm-hmm. But it's like Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. He wanted Arjuna to act. He wanted Arjuna to take that initiative to do his duty. And there's one lecture where Prabhupada actually said, Krishna did not tell Arjuna, I'm just going to give you this pill and it's going to make everything all better. Right? So yeah, we want to pray and be dependent upon Krishna, but Krishna is going to give us the indication how to act, how to seek help, and solve our problems in that way.
Well, perfect. So I have way less time left, and probably I can take the last question. It has to be a crisp last question that I can request from anyone. So Navkishore Prabhu, do you have a final question? But it has to be very precise, please. Okay, the hand's down.
I didn't have one, but thank you very much, Partha Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Okay, I think John Prabhu has a question.
I guess it's more of a comment, Prabhu. I just thought when you were talking about the young brahmacharya who left the ashram with the help of his godbrothers, I had a similar experience. I was avowed religious in a Western religious community. Talk about chastity back in the 80s, and you know, it turned out to be a little too much for me. And my brothers in the community, and especially my spiritual director, helped me to make the decision to come out. And then since then, I've been involved in several men's groups that have been a real blessing to me. And that was one way of you know, getting learning about what it means to be a man in relationship to a woman. And I love these discussions because it brings in Krishna consciousness into that aspect. And I'm grateful for this. So thank you. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, yeah. And as you say, it's important to have someone to talk to. When we have someone to talk to listen to us, it actually helps us to understand ourselves better. I don't always give solutions. It's just the fact you're understood helps you to understand yourself better and make the right decisions. So thank you all very much. A very nice group. I see Maharaj is either waving or has a hand up.
Oh, Maharaj I think Maharaj has some final thoughts on this. Maharaj is still on mute.
Here we are. We're good. I just wanted to say that if we have strong marriages and a real strong sense of community, it makes it very attractive for people to come and participate in this. Because people don't always join societies or communities because of the philosophy or this or that. Oftentimes they come to join because of stability. They see this is a great environment for my kids, or you know, there's just, as we say, you know, takes a village to raise a child. So when you have that strong sense of community with strong marriages, it makes a big difference, and it just draws a lot of people to our society, a lot of attention. And of course, if we don't have it, then the reverse takes place, and people will become very disenchanted. And the first few steps they make is, oh, I hear the divorce rate is not so good. What's the problem here? I said, I really didn't have that in mind. I was thinking to be part of a very strong community. So I think it's really valuable what Partha and Uttama as a couple have been doing around the world, traveling and sharing their experiences, their knowledge, and giving the tools, as was said before, how to ensure at least a better situation for a stronger, more stable marriage relationship. Thank you very much. Just a comment.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your support and encouragement of the Grahasta programs. Thank you very much, Maharaj.
Thank you so much, Maharaj, for those final thoughts, and thank you, Partha Prabhu. So once again, on behalf of every individual who is watching this, and for all those people who will be benefiting from it after watching this recording, thank you so much, Partha Prabhu.